We don't know if they're clean or not.
I feel like I'm at primary school there. You know, when you put your hands up and everyone eventually just follows you and everyone goes silent. You know, you've ever done that? It's amazing how eventually people just do as they're told, even if they're dominant. I find that the most dominant thing. Just insulted everyone. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, there's lots of things you can do, aren't there, when you teach or share or run a workshop. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Deb. I'm also known as the kink shrink, whatever the fuck that means on Twitter. It was a stupid handle I made up quite a while ago, just because it was quite funny, and I run a lot of workshops. I actually, well, it depends on the definition of shrink. I am a qualified therapist, or whatever that means in the UK. Very different to America. I have a lot of American clients. That's my everyday business. It's what I do, and I've done the equivalent to 22 years of training. Bloody hell. I'm 58, and I also have to have been on the kink scene, and since I was 41, 42 years now. That's quite a long time. In that time, definitely been very submissive, switched for a while, never really just on dominance. And then very much more, it's all about my mind and my head more nowadays, and it's purely about physical. I'm too fucking tired, I'm too old, I can't handle it. I like more of the emotional stuff. So I am a demi. I like a connection with somebody before I fuck them. God, it never used to be like that, I tell you. But nowadays it's much more about connection, and I tend to be a cut queen. You know what a cut queen is? Yeah. People who don't. So I am somebody. Have you heard of male cuckold? We do put male with cuckold because they are defined by two genders, which is always interesting, isn't it? So the idea, like if you go back in time, if a man was cuckolded by his wife, it was seen as a humiliation if she slept with somebody else. If you've got kings who have like 300 mistresses, it's fine for the queen to take a load of shit. But if it went the other way around, you're ruining that man's reputation as a man. And so the men were called cuckolds at that time. It's a very, very old word. Cuck queen is a much newer word as a fetish, if you want to call it that. I mean, it is particularly a fetish. There's a very strong definition of what a fetish is versus what turns you on. A fetish is something that you actually need to climax. That's how it's defined. It's very different. So I like my partner sleeping with other people, and I like them telling me about it. I get compersion. Does everyone know what compersion is? Well, it's a day-to-day, isn't it? So compersion is joy from somebody else's joy, loving that I love what somebody else loves, but it's also mixed with a lot of humiliation and degradation, because I like a lot of that stuff as well. So I've been a therapist for quite a long time. I don't know how many hours I've got anymore, 60, 70,000 hours, something like that. And if anyone here is in the psychology world, shit stuff, if you are in that world, let me know, because if you want a free CPD, career professional development certificate, I will send you one. So if you are in that world, because they normally cost like 60 to 100 quid for an hour and a half. So let me know if you want one, and I can knock you off a stick. These have been around, these workshops, for quite a while now, and the idea is that they are a Q&A session, so I never know what's going to come up. I do get the odd person sort of, relaxing back like this and saying, "Oh, I've got a question you probably won't be able to answer." Yes, okay. Might ask it then. But they're kind of free flowing, and I really believe that we are very much all experts in ourselves. Like shit might have got in the way, but you know a lot of your answers, you have a lot going on. When I say healthy mental practices, it was a bit of a joke with David, really. I did the first session a very, very long time ago. We are maxed out to capacity right now because of the numbers that are in here for fire rates. That first time was it was mad, and I got asked the most difficult questions, like, is BDSM self-harm by proxy? Are we all fucked? Are we all traumatized? Are we weird? Should we all burn in hell? And I was like, Jesus, it was quite a lot. And then I thought, I think that went okay. And then all of a sudden it seemed like it did go well, and then we were doing them all the time. And I said, we'll run it down at some point. And about 8-9 years later, we haven't run it down yet. So thank you. So the idea is we can talk about anything you want to here. So it could be about mental health. Of course, we are in a kink venue as such. That doesn't just have to mean about kink or fetishes or different things. We can talk about the psychology of it. We can talk about a lot of things. So it's a Q&A session, and I say this every time. What happens is I say over to you, and everyone goes, doesn't look at me for quite a while. And eventually someone's hand goes up, and I get a question, and then we start rolling, and then I get a lot more questions towards the end. I can't fit it in. And then everyone grabs me afterwards on a front. You can't grab me today. I'm going straight back to a cheerleading competition. Not me, clearly, but my daughter's teams, so I'm straight back there. So, as I say, anything to do with mental health, communication, psychology, kink, relationships, whether they are multiple or not, polyamory, ethical non-monogamy, these are all things that I talk about really regularly around the world, and have done for quite a long time. And that's a very unusual and exciting question, so it is to you. Who has a question? Yeah, your face went, yeah. So where would anyone like to start?
I'm going to start.
Hi, Hal.
So good to see you again, Deb.
Yeah, my love.
Diego and me, we just started to talk about this, and this isn't something that just applies to us gay and other men as such, but
Well, it might
sort of, I don't know, internalized
I'm really
homophobia.
sarcastic.
We started off like internalized homophobia, but internalized self-hatred and all this, which I've come across in my own therapy work as well when I've got clients. How do you tackle that?
Bloody hell, that's big.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm in the middle of something at the moment. I don't know if I'm going to raise the sun. If you do, fuck off and get out. That's how I feel about the sun today. I was outed in the sun yesterday, newspaper, in that we put on a ABDL, Adult Baby Diaper Lovers event, very safe event, good rules, everything else as well, in a children's soft play. There were no children. No children were harmed in the making of that particular event. And it's run in the sun yesterday, and it's everywhere. And now actually the sun responses are varied for different readers. I would say it's actually 60-40, fairly okay and quite positive in that it says things like, fuck's sake, get over it, hen parties are worse, Jesus, they didn't cause any issues, no children were there at the time, what is your problem? And the event was run very tightly with rules and consequences and everything. But then locally, when I look at what's happening locally, near where this particular business is, what we're hearing, I mean, the venue's been called with death threats. We had a 15-year-old employee called him fucking pervert earlier. People have said, go down and make trouble, you're all nonces, you're all paedophiles. And there is a lot of hatred for who we are. Whether you are queer, that you fall into that whole big spectrum, which I have done for, since I've known myself. We've spoken about it before, some of the original Pride marches in the UK. That really does make me that old. And I still think sometimes that I surround myself with people who are like me. So I don't get a lot of shit. So when I do get reminded of shit, I go, fuck me, the world's a toxic place. These people aren't very nice. The association that just because you maybe like sucking on a dummy means you want to sleep with a child is just beyond me. And the problem is we internalize a lot of that. And I think, oh God, here we go, if you've listened to me before, I think epigenetics play a part in that. What do I mean? I think for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, we have things that pass down to us in messages. I'm not talking some weird force of energy. I'm actually saying I know anything about epigenetics. I make it up. So we have experiences really that impact our DNA, impacts our protein, how we remember, recognise, and how things get passed down. And you've got your basic genome, and it's like a book really that says what colour skin you've got, what colour eyes you've got, who you are. And this can jump generations and generations and generations. You can have an Asian couple who have a white baby 50 generations later, and the immediate assumption is that someone's cheated, and that's not true. Our genes can jump so many generations. Epigenetics are experiential, and actually the way they've been tested, they at least go back 22 sets of generations, which means it's endless and unlimited. If you think of how tradition and our experience in life hits that, when you think about sexual freedom I was born in 1965. I have a Swiss passport. Women didn't get the vote till I think it's 75 or 71 in there. And that's quite shocking. I think, shit, that's all my family. Even after I was born, like, my mum didn't have the vote when she was born. We talk about sexual liberation, people having sex freely, but I was just saying about kings and queens even. So it's very much, sorry whether you like this or not, so even when we look at the idea of patriarchy of male rights, it's always been straight white men for a very long time. And I really understand that offends a lot of straight white men. But it's been this way for so long, it's quite embedded even in our DNA of who is wrong and who is right, what is good and what is bad. And you can see it in different cultures. So one of the fights we have is how much we have internalized what everybody feels. So it comes with culture with a capital C, and it comes with culture with a small c. When I see someone, like sending a death threat over a Facebook message to a group of people with horrible words in, with things like, I'm going to come down and beat you all up and murder you, because of what they've been taught in their life, I'm not surprised that we internalise that. How many people here feel that they can't tell everyone exactly who they are? And if you look around the room, that's quite a few people. Now, what if I say that you can't share who you are, but I don't just mean your sexuality, your preferences. I don't mean that you may be like 3,000 spiders put into your fucking belly button or whatever in a plastic bag. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, right? Just doesn't matter. Even to show someone what your thoughts or views or opinions are, that somehow you won't be enough, that somehow I bet a lot of this room are more human doings than human beings. You get valued by being a bit of a people pleaser of who you are. So anyone feel that as well? Mm-hmm. Like fairly majorly, whether it's at work or somewhere else. It's a real mixture. And depending on the big C culture and the small C culture, it's very, very ingrained as to who we are and what that means. All those epigenetics, all those thousands of years, all that weight of responsibility. Your own mental health isn't just to do with you, it's to do with your great-great-great-great-grandma's shit that she put up with maybe as well. And that's quite crazy to think about, isn't it? To think, fuck, it isn't just me. However, whatever happens, it's still our fucking responsibility to sort it out. People don't like that. I get that. We're the only ones that can change anything. When you want someone else to change, you give your power away. I'm not going to have a conversation with any of these people calling me a nonce. What's the fucking point? They won't listen. There's no point having a conversation. I'm more likely to be stabbed than I am to be listened to. If you're in a scenario with someone open-minded, that's maybe the case. So I'll turn that back on you. Are you open-minded? We like to think we are. I'm open-minded. You're not. And most of us are not. I know we think we are, but actually we have quite strong double standards about people, about what we do and how we act, and about ourselves and how that works. So it's really important to think about how open-minded are you about yourself? Can you be open-minded? Because why would you think badly of yourself just because you're gay? That's a question. Why would you? Do you know the answer for you personally?
This is something I don't think there's a straightforward answer.
Neither do I. That's why people come to therapy for fucking years.
Yeah.
But I think we have to try and find out our relationship with ourselves and find out what that means when it comes to self-confidence or anything. I'm completely out. I'm out about being a queer woman. I'm out about being kinky, alternative, polyamorous. I'm very out about those things. And even though I'm out, I still get a lot of shit for it. I've been outed 3 or 4 times. I'm like, fucking already out. How many times do I need to be outed? It's mad. But it turns. I remember 4 or 5 years ago having someone say, do not speak to this woman. Do not let her meet your children. She is dangerous. And it was all over Facebook. And when you stop breathing, well, you might not, but I definitely stopped breathing. It's an exaggeration, but I felt, oh God, I can't breathe, I won't manage this. But what's interesting is the campaign against me was to stop me doing something internationally and actually in the cheer world. So they decided to go for me. And this person had clearly been stalking me for a while because there's a plenty of fish photos free there. I was like, it's not even out there. Like, Jesus, how has this person found me? We like to attack what we don't know. We like to attack what we're not familiar with, and we like to attack what we assume. And actually, genetically and epigenetically, you are designed to follow the crowd. Why? Do you know why? Sorry?
Acceptance.
Acceptance, survival, okayness. we will look after our own. Here it's quite nice, I think, especially if it's your first time of, oh, there are lots of weird people here just like me. And we use that weird word a lot. Why? Are we that weird? Because we're fucking common. When you look at kinky people, the statistics are interesting. Now I'm talking Anne Summers levels, but if you go into Anne Summers and turn left or go straight forward after bloody 50 Shades of Grey, it's right there. There was a massive following. I mean, the sale of nipple clamps went up by 2,000% in the first month after the release of 50 Shades of Grey. There were grey babies. Like 9 months later, there was a shit ton of babies. Not quite sure. And whether you like the film or the books or not, it isn't about that. It's about acceptability. It's about familiarity. But it still runs against the crowd. When you think LGBTQI, so we look at some of those fucking letters and acronyms and different things that we use for everything and words. Lesbian, gays, bis, transitioning into like, Jesus, all these things that we use are also used as insults for every single person that you know in their own way. Actually, you can't win. Everything is used as an insult. But what's interesting is, how many of your friends do you think statistically are queer or alternative or kink? Do you know what the percentage is? In the UK.
Probably quite high.
What do you think?
I'd probably say 70-80%.
Of your friends?
Probably.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay. Of
Because
your
my
friends?
friends, it's like all of them. I surround myself with them.
I just want to sleep with them all. You see my parties. No, but there's a truth in this. We surround ourselves with people that we feel safe with. Now, safe is the wrong word. Familiar with can be ourselves with and everything else as well. But how much do you think is a percentage when we go out there, when we walk down the street? How many of the population is classified as LGBTQI? This is even without the kink.
20%.
20? 10?
2%.
2% is 6. Now, like, a lot of you are going from because it's shocking. If you've got 70% compared to the world of 6, so we're still really unusual in that bigger world as we see it. And if you go to Afghanistan, guess how many percentage are fucking 0, otherwise you're going to die. If you go to different places where you've got extremities where people are murdered, it's still in Russia. There are still fucking too many countries where, even being who you are, we're murdered for what we are. And that's still around. Just so heavy for a Sunday afternoon. So a lot of that is all very ingrained. It's really fucking hard to combat that. Anyone here studied any form of psychology? I know you don't. Anyone here studied transactional analysis? Okay, so TA has something called a PAC model, parent, adult, child model. And the basis of that, because it's fucking way more complex than this, but the basis of it is it's our thoughts, behaviours and feelings according to who we are as a human, the influences. So the P on the top stands for parent. That means your school friends, your parents, your culture, your society have an influence on how you think, how you feel, and how you behave. The adult part is the bit in the middle, which is kind of present, maybe a little more open-minded. It's quite hard to be open-minded as such, the way I'm meaning it. And the C stands for the child's experience of how it was for them. Now, if you think how many things impacted you as a child of, God, like I can give you thousands and thousands of examples when, you know, when the mum pats your stomach when you're 8 years old and says, oh, putting on a little bit of weight, let's not wear a bikini again. Or the school nurse says, oh, really need to do something about your family, your knits are terrible. Like, all these little comments that just attack people. And then you go into the bigger comments where you've got racism, you've got every religion that's going against you, like so many things that impact human beings. We've got it now if you look at it. I don't have a religion. I've definitely been brought up as a Jewish woman. My epigenetics are really fucking Jewish, right? I make soup for everyone. I feed people. I am that woman, and I can feel my epigenetics and genetics come into it. And I was talking to one of my daughters, and she was saying, I'm not going to go into a political conversation. I'm not. Jesus, I don't feel like I can even admit who I am right now. She said, I can't even have a conversation with my friends. I'm like, why not? She said, well, just like with Palestine, you can be pro-Palestine and Jewish, and it's different to Israel. It's different. But the conversations aren't going that way now. So, it's all of this stuff is really complex as to how it influences you. But actually, if you look at the term, has anyone heard of transgenerational trauma? Anyone heard that term? Do you know what it actually means?
Yeah.
What would you interpret it as, anyone?
Well, maybe the fact that lots of, I'll use the term black people, still suffer from trauma, from whatever experiences might have taken place around slavery and all that in the 17th, 16th, 17th century.
So we can get transgenerational trauma that's more short term. So your mum, your dad, your grandmother, your grandfather might have experienced some sort of trauma and it might have impacted you. 9/11 was a really good example of that, whereby 100% of the babies who were born in the second or third trimester, 100%, please listen to that, were born with PTSD or chemical physical symptoms of PTSD. When the babies were tested, one of the ways we test for this, and we are not tested for this because we're not going to do it all the time, nobody does it. So what happened was that all the babies that were born who were in the second or third trimester or had their placenta intact during the 9/11 attack, all the babies were born with CPTSD because their cortisol was shit through the floor. Do you know why that would represent trauma or CPTSD?
Cortisol depletion.
Yeah. So when we're really stressed, you've got special hormones that come up and go, shh, okay, I've got you. Okay, you're okay. But these are cunts because they actually also kill you eventually if there are too many in your system. They will give you a heart attack and you'll not be well. Anyone here have like cortisone or different injections, maybe for hips or shoulders or backs or knees or anyone? That's just me. I'm not right good. Anyone else at all? I'm not missing them. You can only have a few a year, can't you? You cannot have them regularly. And the reason is your body cannot work out the way we function and think. If there's too much or too little cortisol, it's a stress response. It's a hormonal stress response. I feel like I'm doing a chemistry and biology class today instead of just psychology. So what happens is you get calmed, you get calmed, you get calmed, you get calmed. There's a fucking shit ton going on in your body. That would pass you an A-level. So what it does is it just drops all of the cortisol. So one of the symptoms of people with very high levels of stress is their cortisol is actually a bit too low, which is the opposite to what we think. And all these babies were born with very, very low cortisol levels, like really below average or normal. If you read the research, you can look her up. Her name's Rachel Yehuda. I've definitely spoken about her before, and she works with a guy in Scotland who's an epigeneticist. Go on.
Yeah, you said 100% of the babies who were, you don't mean over the world, every baby.
Every baby that was tested that was connected, and there were hundreds of them.
Connected to
Connected
the
to 9/11. So, but I reckon if we did a worldwide test now over COVID and about all those babies that were born at that time, I think you'd find something very, very similar. It was really interesting after the Spanish flu, which definitely should be called the American flu, because it was a bloody bird in America that caused all that trouble, but we never blame, sorry if you're American, we never blame the Americans, but it was actually an American flu. If you look at what happened and the wave that came back and the similarities to COVID 100 years later, there was a definite, if you watch the economics, if you watch the social aspects, even 10, 20, 30, 40 years later, there's an impact each and every time. I actually think people are a little harsher right now. I think people are quite aggressive, they're quite vitriolic. They're driving the way they're ready to attack. It's quite interesting the impact that it's had and why. And I can only wonder about it, but I'd love for there to be nationwide, worldwide testing everywhere. But we don't do that yet. So everyone that came forward on this piece of work, so everyone who was impacted, so the request you put out, if you have been impacted by this, please come forward. And so many pregnant women came forward, and those are the findings. 100% of the babies of the women that came forward. So what we know is the experience of the mother impacts the experience of the baby, even from birth. That's interesting, isn't it? Because how much of your mind is affected by your mum, your dad, and anyone else? There are two generations. There are two sets of people. You were right, and the reason I didn't stop you when you used the word black instead of people of colour or it's not everybody. It is black people and Jewish people have the most transgenerational trauma in the world because of persecution. Now look, you might get a local Jewish person who's born in Stepney Green, has been there for 3,000 years, and they're absolutely fine, right? Of course you will. But overall, when you go back through history, you find different things. You've also got, I think, depending on how you bring someone up, you are not born a racist or an anti-Semitist or any of those things because of these things. But the likelihood is, if your parents are like that, you're probably going to end up believing it. So I'll stick with mine because I don't want to use any racist comments or anything else as well. You let's say you're brought up to believe, let's go with Jewish people. So those fucking Yitzkites, whoever they are, they should all be shot, don't like them. I think Hitler had it right, let's put them all in a gas chamber. That's your parents, right? It is fundamentally important for you to believe your parent, otherwise you are not going to survive. Human beings do not survive without their parents. We know that. We are one of the most vulnerable beings on the fucking planet. So many animals and species, actually many species, can survive without their parents very quickly. We cannot. We take years and years and years and years of dependency and impact.
I think it also comes into play with like soft comments. So I think that some of the things that my parents would have said that isn't necessarily being transphobic outright, but has undertones of things like, defining sort of a woman by having a womb and things like that, is something that I think, unless I'd heard that without having my trans friends and things like that, if I'd have heard that without knowing anyone who's in that scenario, what other reference point have I got to believe other than that? But it was the fact that I was able to be like, no, I've got friends who are that doesn't really fit.
And it's even more conflicting than it used to be, because the only thing we had when I was growing up was your fucking Britannica encyclopedia at the library, or anything else as well, because the internet wasn't around. I am that fucking old, right? It came into my life in the middle of it with my kids and stuff. So you have no other reference points. And then that's even more confusing, because you read something from the Sun and it must be true. And then we've got fake news, we've got all of these different things influencing us. So children feel more unstable than ever because of what they're reading, because of social media, because of all of these things. And we get cortisol and lovely hormonal hits from everything we read and the likes and the bits and pieces. So if you add all those things, but it's not still enough just to hear a comment. If you really, really want to make somebody fundamentally believe something. So I said the parent-adult child model. If mum and dad in your family, let's face it, the social circle now, because we all stick to what we're familiar with, if they're all having a go saying we're fucking human beings, what you've got there is like a contamination of our adult. Our adult doesn't think freely. It's not open-minded, because you have a contamination about queers, about gays, about those kinky motherfuckers, about all of us in so many ways. Still not enough by itself. And that's why I like TA for a lot of its examples. It has some really good models that you can learn from. It's easy. The child has to experience it for a real contamination to take place. Go on.
But just for a quick example of it, when I was growing up, I liked a lot of dark clothing in the town where I grew up in, and there was a bit of a schism about that culturally, whether it was something we did openly or not. And I remember seeing a father talk to his child. She must have been maybe 4 or 5, about this tall, and point to me on the street and go, "You call that a grebo?" To the kids and things like that. So I've had it, literally watched it happen, of parents try to incorporate their children into their prejudice and into this sort of like street attack of being shouted. That's one of the very few instances I had of someone, trying to shout and intimidate me on the street for just wearing clothing.
But for you, that has a go at you. For the child, it hasn't fully contaminated them yet, because what you need to do is go, "Oi, you fucking cunt," headbutt the father and put them on the floor. I'm not suggesting.
Thought about it, but I didn't want to do that in front of
And that's when the child will then be contaminated by their experience as an adult, because, oh, Dad was right then. He's clearly a twat and he's violent and aggressive. I'll come back to you 1 second, promise. And from a TA perspective, what we know then is there is a double contamination. So there's very little adults left. Now, most of us have these experiences about something, whether it's what you think about having short hair or long hair, or human beings, or whether you should be educated, or whether you should go out and get a job, whether you should earn money, what success is. These are quite a lot of interesting things that we buy into and believe. So for a real nasty contamination to take place, the child has to experience it too, which often we do, as we don't fit in to be safe and to be okay. If you look different, I'll come back to you 1 second, I promise. So it has such a big influence on us. And unless we start to combat that and help this human being decontaminate And again, from a TA perspective, you might decontaminate, but once you've decontaminated, your therapy still isn't done. You now have to deconfuse the childlike part of ourselves that says, what the fuck actually happened there? And have all these years not been right? And what do I do about this and where do I fit in? From your perspective, as a young person, it might have caused you discomfort. Your cortisol levels would have changed. You might have been scared. You might have been fucked off. And that's a different impact again on us continuously. I'll come to you.
I've come out and gone in so many times, you know, I'm like those weather things you get. So I've had a roller coaster of a coming out. It's just when you sort of said, well, I'm trans, and then people say, no, you're not really, because you haven't changed your name, you haven't done surgery, you haven't done this.
Oh yeah, no, real trans. You have to have it all chopped and changed, don't you?
And my
What's
parents,
turn real mean?
my parents' example of you know, relatively recently, the last few years, my mum was watching TV, it's 1970s pop band, The Sweet, track called What Buster, you might know it. And all the guys, all the band have got long blonde hair and balloons, I think they're called, big bright. And she's looking at it saying, and they fellas, little eyeglasses. So putting that idea of, there's a binary idea of
Yeah, of course there is. The same as there is around marriage, around children out of marriage, around everything. The thing is, if we try and fight and change it too much with people, this is interesting. If we get into a fight with them, it doesn't change a lot because people become more defensive. We need to get into discussion. And that discussion should not attack. But the problem is, what you're talking about is our self-confidence and how we are and how it feels. We often attack ourselves. So we also get defensive. If you've got part of you saying you shouldn't fucking do that, no, I know. I'm like, actually, no, fuck you. No, fuck you. No, fuck you even more. And actually, it's so internalized that actually we start to get lost in that. And that's part of the problem. It is about, first of all, looking at our own lack of open-mindedness. It's looking about where this shit comes from, generationally, what happened. One of my PhDs, like I really want to do, and I say again, it's so boring, the transgenerational epigenetic scripting of sexually submissive women. If I look through my own history, I can see my great-grandmother, 5 husbands, different sets of kids. You know, she bodily threw out like the equivalent to social services in Switzerland. She said she clearly can't bring up children by herself. The molestation, the sexual assaults on the women and how that worked, and my own mum, and watching it's quite interesting. Now that doesn't mean I have to pathologise myself and say, well, you're fucked up, Deb, because you're trying to change something there. It's all about acceptance. How do I embrace who I am and work with it? One of the girls just earlier, because you're always in a squash court at these fucking competitions, that sounds so strange, but honestly you are. And this young woman looked at me and just burst into tears. And I went, no, stop. That's not very therapeutic, is it? I said, stop that process. Tell me what's going on. She went, I can't remember the dance. I only learned it on Friday. I went, oh, fuck off. Now I can talk. This isn't therapy, right? I said, Breen would not put you there if she didn't know that you can't do this. If you go into that choice right now, you've got 2 options. You embrace how you feel and you work with it and you accept it, and or you change it. Which one are you going to do? And I said, I'm just going to give you a clue here. If you accept it, the change is already started. It's really hard. We just need to accept that really horrible dark side of ourselves as well and work with it instead of against it. Because as soon as you start having a go, it causes more disruption and more disruption. Because you can't have those conversations. You work with
It's just a comment about your experience with a child, and that is that the parent probably isn't even aware of the potential danger of making that comment to that child, and just thought that was perfectly, oh, that guy is that, and didn't realise that potentially that could.
But we don't. Parents aren't given lessons. Do you know what qualification you need to have a parent? Fucking bit of sperm underneath. That's it. That's your qualification. You need to come inside someone or have a baster for turkey, or I don't know. That's all you need. There are no qualifications for parenting. And thank fuck, actually, otherwise most of us would not be parents. And I'm really curious, like, is anyone here a social worker? About to be. There are definite interesting complications when I look at social work. I'm involved in a lot of multiple disciplinary team meetings because I work with quite a few children who have very severe behavioural issues, shall we say. And actually, I work really hard with the parents to try and change it. Whereas what I get from most parents is they can't help it, it's not their fault, they need this, they need that, and actually they don't, they need the opposite. I promise I'm coming back and back. So it's really hard then. And I'm watching this one particular young woman, I'm saying she's 15. Fuck me, that kid is violent. I mean, seriously violent. But it's changing. I've been seeing her for 10 weeks now. It's absolutely changing. The school have even said, can we chuck you another 10 sessions because we love how she's changing. We're not going to expel her anymore. And you know what it is? It's awful, but it is about love, giving her love, time and attention. But it's also about consequences, boundaries, how we bring up a child. And not for her mum to say she can't help it, it's because she's like this. We can all help quite a lot. And she has a shit ton of diagnoses. And what's interesting, one of her diagnoses is oppositional defiance disorder. Does anyone know what that is? So
DSM-5 terminology and definition of being basically a teenager.
yeah, somewhat. I get a lot of parents come to me and say, can you help me? I think my kid's fucked up. They're just a teenager. Stay consistent, be kind, hold your boundaries. Your kid's fine. Like they're not. No, they're not. But so oppositional defiance disorder means if you tell me to do something, I'm going to do the opposite. We call them brats, right? Sorry if you're a brat. We don't really. But she can't have ADD. She cannot have ADD because I watch her at cheer and she does everything she's told. And when she talks to me, she does everything she's told. She only has it with her mum. So I'm working with mum to help mum overcome that, and it's having these incredible. I came this morning and so she went, oh my God, she went to bed in my room last night. We only had a light on, a small one. I gave them a night light. She said it worked completely. She's a bit like, I can't fucking believe these changes. But actually, it's not about the child's changes. She's changing as a mum and she's making this much nicer environment for her child, which is also about consequences. But it's very much about love as well. You were going to ask or say.
It's just about what you've been talking about, and also like resonating with you. So I just wanted to. I've read it. I'm really into psychology. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a professional in any way, but I you
might know more than half of us.
So I've read a book on gaslighting trauma, and there's exercises in the book, and it's the start of it is all shadow work, which is what I've been doing. So obviously learning a little bit about how I was brought up. Was I gaslit as a child? Obviously I've gaslit myself, all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I the exercises was to listen. Has anyone heard of Bryony Brown?
Bring it wrong?
Right, yeah, Bryony. Right, okay.
Yeah.
So I watched her TED talk on shame, and that's what you're talking about. That's essentially what you're talking about. And I'm sure there are many of us in this room. I'm a trauma survivor, and it wasn't, even though I've overcome a lot of my trauma, just by going through that book, I've learned that just myself, I've put so much shame on my trauma and what I did to myself, on what happened to me, and I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? And 9 times out of 10 it's because we're doing it to ourselves.
100%. We mainly do our shit to ourselves. Nobody else needs to say it. It's just if they say it, it points it out. And you're like, fuck, I burst into tears earlier, not just with this whole thing that's happening, but there's something else happening as well. And this mum meant really well. She really did. And I can't talk about legally what's happening. I just can't. And there was one point where I sort of turned around. She asked me a question in such a way that I burst into tears. And the reason I burst into tears is because I felt ashamed. And the reason I felt ashamed is, why didn't I know that this person was doing these things to other people? And I feel like I should have protected these girls. God, rough idea of what's going on there. And I was like, fuck, I'm a trained professional. How didn't I see it? But what a heap of fucking bollocks.
I don't mind talking about my trauma because it's not.
Others, hang on then. Others might. So, and this
okay,
is so what
fine.
we get. So I'm not telling you not to. So sometimes when we talk about trauma, I have quite an interesting thing when I talk about trauma in BDSMers anyway. Repeating it, a lot of BDSMers say, oh no, but I'm gaining power over it. You are when it works. The minute it goes the tiniest bit wrong, your cellular response in your body, if you go back to some of the real experts in this, Deborah Marty, Bessel van der Kolk, there's quite a few books and different people you can read about it. The repetition of trauma is a drive. So if you were assaulted in some way, notice I use the lighter words, you try to repeat the trauma to gain power over it, which can be fantastic when it goes perfectly well. The minute it goes slightly wrong, you make yourself a victim again because you've lost your power. So actually, it's much better to work on your mind with it at the same time and find resilience and techniques and different things, and then still be a fucking kinky motherfucker alongside it. My point was about other people might is we get a lot of vicarious trauma nowadays from the internet, from everywhere else, where Everyone shares very heavy stories. And actually, we then talk about triggers. I fucking hate that word so much. And I think some of the most overused words in our worlds are triggers, gaslighting, and narcissism. We are all gaslit. Gaslighting is part of life. It's a fucking normal part of life. Your parents lied to you about fucking Father Christmas and the Tooth Fairy and everything else as well. And your first day at school will be fine. Right? Fucking lying cunts, aren't they? That little boy likes you when he hurts you. Get used to it. No, maybe that's what made us all perverts. Of course it appeals. Oh, I'm speaking to actually both psychologists. This little girl has been so bullied by a little boy at school, and school said it's probably because he likes you. Should we not teach a 5-year-old girl that the way someone likes her is for her to have a fucking shit kicked out of her or to be bullied? Because if she then takes that into her life, and then she meets someone at 15, 16 and is taught that is normal. So that's the same thing as we're talking the opposite spectrum of that. So this is normal. He must like me. Fucking hell. Let's teach people that isn't okay. And the reason I talk about trauma, so triggers really gets on my nerves as well. I much prefer the words patterns and predictors. Have people heard about that difference or not really? So for me, a trigger is my environment, something in the environment or another person has such an influence on me that I have a visceral response because of what I've been through and they did it to me. Does that make sense? I read that, I have a response to it. I smell that, I have a response to it. And we know that actually a lot of our senses are quite triggered by things. Maybe not even us when we talk about transgenerational shit, what word did you use? Like, especially around queer or anything else as well. We don't like some words, do we? Pervert, you might not like that word. I definitely don't like the word paedophile. I don't want to be called paedophile, funny enough. However, there are two forms of paedophilia. There are certain age groups that it goes in. There are certain types of paedophilia. There's so much in it that's way more complex. And even if you find somebody who's got on the sex offender register, 3-4 years ago, the first case in the UK was done of two 15-year-olds sending pictures of themselves to each other sexually because they were in a relationship. They're on the sex offender register. Should they be? It's quite interesting, isn't it? They are guilty of sending paedophilic images to each other. I know, but you're like, So, because there are rules at 18 and not 16, and the law is very different. Truth, fact, law, justice, perception, all very different things. These people writing all this shit about us being very, very bad humans is a perception or a teaching or something that we've taken and integrated. So I prefer the word patterns and predictors. So my pattern tells me that this smell is dangerous. So I'm now using I a lot more, which means I have more power to change it. Then my predictor comes in and says this will happen because of what I'm experiencing right now. How do I change my pattern? Where's my power? How do I empower myself? What do I want to do? Let's play a little bit of a game. Who here has more than 10p anywhere in the world? Got more than 10 pence? Yeah. I mean, I think I'm minus what I do, but yeah. So I use a little trick called lottery. You may have heard this or not. It's definitely one of my tricks. But, these things get around. So what I want you to do, I don't care if you've got 10p, £10,000, £100,000. I want you to take every single motherfucking penny that you've got, and I want you to buy lottery tickets. Everything you have. If you have an overdraft facility of 10 grand, I want you to put that on as well. Everything. Will you? Why not? Who's saying no? Why wouldn't you? And I will come back to it, I promise. Why is the risk too high?
Uncertainty.
Sorry?
Uncertainty.
Uncertainty.
It's a condition factor.
Yeah, so it depends on your risk, benefit, and your risk, like how you are, how we look at things. But there's one reason why you can't that's really fundamental. Really fundamental. You can't predict the fucking future. Unless you went in that car, that DeLorean, and you nicked that book. If you haven't seen the film, I've just got shown it completely. You don't have certainty, do you? But isn't it funny? Because when you don't feel okay, I want you to think back to the last time you thought, fuck, this won't go well. That little girl I just spoke to, she can fucking predict the future, though, can't she? I won't remember the dance, I can't do it, I'm going to fuck up. How many times have you said that negatively to yourselves? Isn't it interesting? So I have to say the word lottery to myself quite a lot because you only predict the future when it's negative. You notice that? Then you're a fucking soothsayer, aren't you? You can make millions out of that shit. You're absolutely right all the time. And the reason we're like that is because of our patterns, because of what's happened to us, because we believe that it will always happen. And I said to this kid, it was a very fast therapy session, it clearly wasn't. I said, keep thinking like that's exactly what's going to happen. Visualize in your head now, getting it right, going, come back to you. And she did. She did a fucking great dance. And I looked at her and I went, she is over 18. And it was really funny. Like I said to her afterwards, I went, what a fucking waste of emotion that was, wasn't it? She went, yeah. And then yesterday we had 2 girls have something called a tumble bus, and this is a brilliant team. They come first wherever they go. I'm talking about world champion children here. I'm not talking about low level. I'm talking about every single kid in our gym is a national champion, and every single international team has won summit or worlds at least once. In fact, or NCA. None of these words mean anything to you, but they're really fucking big deals if you know cheerleading. Right, so in America, Shadowers are known as being the level 1 team to absolutely be one of the best in the world. And they're ours, and that's what we do, and that's what my daughter does really, and it's amazing. So these kids need to develop a different mentality. We're back at Summit, we've got 87 athletes flying to America. There isn't time for them 3 minutes before they go on to say, I don't think we could do this really. Like it's not an option at that level of athleticism. Like world fucking champions, fucking rings everywhere. Amazing kids. But we waste our whole thing on our patterns and predictors because it suits us. You are hardwired to be negative, and that's another thing that comes into our self-esteem, how we put ourselves down, especially around who we are, our looks, everything, the comparisons that we do. How many of you are on any form of social media? Even if it's FetLife, don't you look at some of those pictures sometimes and go, fuck me, I could never breathe like that, or Jesus, look at that, or look at their body, or look at their shape, or look at their hair, or look at that. It doesn't matter what it is, only you compare. You rarely look, this is really true about social media, we tend to look around and up. We rarely look around and down, or even at the people who can't even fucking afford to be online in the world. We don't look around at what people haven't got, we look at what they have got. And then we compare and find ourselves lacking. You get picked up on an algorithm. I honestly feel that as a person on social media, I can be quite lefty, quite alternative, quite, I'm definitely more accepting of change and difference. I actually need to follow a couple of Ku Klux Klan, Nazi, right-wing fundamental groups, because that will give me the balanced view. I remember my daughter saying when Trump got in, it doesn't matter if you're pro-Trump, I don't care about that. She was really shocked because her social media is quite left-leaning. She was like, fuck did that happen? Everyone's getting, they weren't. And that doesn't matter. It's the same if you look at Boris here or any of those. You feed your social media. So social media represents your fucking brain as well. You don't look around. You look at what should be, what could be. And you get on a fucking drama triangle, which is a cuntish place to be, of victim or persecutor or rescuer. And none of those are in an adult position either. And we do it to ourselves. I think part of it is what I said to that young girl today. You either accept where you are, and go, wow, I'm really having some negative thoughts about myself, my sexuality and how things are, to make that change. And then I don't think it's healthy to then go out fighting. It doesn't help us because we just get squished. The odd conversation. When I first wanted to study becoming any form of psychologist or psychotherapist or anything, it's like, oh my God, change the world. Fucking ego. Actually, it's much more effective to hit and impact one person at a time rather than trying to change everyone, because you can't change everyone. You've got to start with you though. You were going to ask.
I was going to say, how can you safely challenge some of those controversial opinions?
Where?
That just get
Online?
Yeah.
Fucking don't bother, right? Look, if you can pick on one person, there's a really, I loved this. I've really spoken about it before. And I actually do mean don't bother unless you can take what's coming. I was turned on FetLife a couple of months ago by a group of very right-wing fucking out. It was like vitriolic, and the stuff that was being made up became about me personally when it was absolutely nothing. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is interesting. My only option was to block. I complained, I did everything properly. I say the same to when I speak to people who are victims of some kind of assault. Because what happens often is if you go to the police, you stand a 1% chance of getting a conviction for a rape. 1%. Fuck hell. Do I still encourage people to go to the police? Yes, under provisos. The reason I encourage is not because I think you should try and get a conviction, but the more that person's name is put out there, the more these things are known, the more you're helping your people of the future. And it makes a difference. However, you can't have any fucking expectations out of it. You can't. When you try and fight, promise I'll come back, when you try and fight somebody, when you put your own safety in danger, I don't think that's a sensible thing to do in that moment. But don't get me wrong, I've stood up, I've been on those Pride marches, I've had fucking rocks thrown at me, spit. Who here ever goes to Pride? What's it like now? Sorry?
You're not welcome.
What, Pride? The marches? Do you not think so?
It's not necessarily that every time people say that, oh, at Pride you're possibly going to be welcome. It is not for everybody that you're going to be welcome.
Oh, that I agree with.
Yeah, so how it is technically seen, like for example, A person or B person are like, oh, this is where I am. The C person who possibly new to it, he's not technically, or she's not technically.
They're not technically, yeah. I see what you're saying. Overall, though, are you having rocks thrown at you? Are the police kettling you to put you in a safe area?
The geographical location where you are.
Not in the UK anymore. Not really. Not as much as that.
I would say in cities, not. If you go a little bit away.
Okay, yeah. I'll take that one as well. If you are in a very small village and you're the only gay in the village, as we put it out, there's a big difference. But overall, Pride is more about glitter nowadays. It is more about drugs. Like, there's a lot of drugs. It wasn't. As an old fucking off, like a sanctimonious fucking witch hag here. I'm definitely a crone nowadays, right? Virgin or the mother. My experience of being in those at that time was abject fear. Camaraderie, because you were with people that were like you. But if you got cut off, you weren't just going to have someone disagree with you, you were probably going to get the shit kicked out of you. Or rocks were being thrown, or you were spat at, or even the police, she's so swallowing, even the police at that time would still. Did anyone go on those marches like then? What was it like for you?
I remember us going to a sort of a courtyard where there was supposed to be a university, and we'd go in and there'd be all these talks, there'd be a dance, so we were all looking forward to the end of the march. And police blocked off the exit.
Yeah.
And I was raised with Bobby is your friend, and I learned the difference that day. Somebody had been arrested on the march for having an offending hat, had a meat cleaver on it. And then,
I mean, that is pretty fucking scary. That could
yeah.
take someone.
And then apparently the person next to them said, why are you arresting them? And they were arrested. And then somebody else got confused and sat down, and they were arrested for loitering. And about 10 people all got arrested. And so we got to the other end. We couldn't get in the building. The people who were putting on the event had closed the building. The police were blocking us up, and they were basically trying to incite a riot. And nobody knew what was going on. Everyone was getting agitated. And then
agitated, fucking scared.
Yeah, and it was all the exits were blocked, and it I never would have believed it. Going from going 2468 is just started really straight, and feeling free and supported to what the shit is going on. And someone announced that we marched 2 by 2. They couldn't arrest us, and we actually did march. We went to the police station and we sat there. And we basically sat down and sang until they were so embarrassed they let our friends go. And then we danced like wild animals when we got back to the venue, let off steam. But I never would have believed that, because I went from feeling safe and secure, having been brought up in a hateful household, to feeling free. I'm in London, I'm on this march, and these people are all different, it's all lovely, and we're all there, and we're together, and we're all, it's all, we can do this together. And I never would have believed that.
Yeah, we don't do it.
No.
And it's like you're saying, it's also about upbringing. Again, we talk about patterns and predictors and everything else. But it's all about our experience, about what happens, about the impact that it has. And I think if you're willing to take a risk and you want to fight someone, it can work. And I was saying there's this lovely situation whereby this woman, stereotype. Let's go for a stereotype, but really deep south, very strong convictions about what's right and wrong, about men are men, women are women, you marry your cousin, that was sarcastic, I just live with my cousin, it's not that. And so it's that's a true story. So it's all right, the royals have done it for years. So but really quite right-wing type views, and she attacked this human being by saying, you know, y'all dangerous because my motherfucking, like, she was really cross, really dangerous. You know, you have made my child ill. My child wants to be a man. It's because of people like you. And now she bounds her breasts tightly with bandages, and she will probably have all sorts of problems because of it. Now, we could attack that person there in that moment, could have hit out, done something. And instead of doing that, like, a lot of people were going for her, some people were supporting her. This person engaged her, difference. And they engaged her and said, gosh, I'm really sorry to hear that. How is your child? What the fuck would you know? You're a complete cunt. How dare you influence my child? Still engaged, kept engaging. It's much harder work. So you've got to have the spoons, the energy to engage, preferably one by one, or it takes quite a long time. And they engaged and engaged and engaged. And you watch this woman calm very slowly over time. Has anyone seen this online? Did any of you see it? Like, it's so interesting to read it. And she said, well, what is my child supposed to do? And they said, listen, after my transitioning, I've had my top surgery, and I would really recommend that they don't wear bandages. You're completely right. You're so right to be worried about the health and mental health of your child. Listen, I can get you a binder that's healthy, that's safe. If you give me their size, I will support you. I'll send it to you free of charge. Fuck me, that woman turned around eventually. And it was so beautiful to watch because of the engagement rather than the... If I come up to one of you and I say, well, you're fucking wrong, whatever, you have choices. You either go into a corner and cower, or you come out fighting. It's more complex than that. So you've got fight, flight, freeze, friend, fuck, flop, phone, fawn. Right? There aren't just a couple. There are many. We fawn, we people please, we have sex instead because we're so frightened about what could possibly happen. And we make quite extreme choices in those circumstances. So attacking someone actually doesn't help. What the fuck do you know? You're a prejudice. It actually doesn't help. This person just gave the most perfect example of how to engage another human being. And again, I'm going to take that back to your question. How do you engage yourself rather than attack? How do you have those conversations? Come back in 1 minute because you put your hand up and then you didn't come back, I promise.
So I actually have like a three-fold kind of question. So mentioning about the fact that you mentioned about the justice system, and somebody who is working currently in the justice system, how would you like to, so because everything is becoming new right now, people are becoming more open, people are becoming more accepting. How do we change it? How do we move forward? Like, how would you like to see this? The second question comes around is how I work with the social social service. Like, I'm not part of social service, but I work with a lot of them. And you rightly stated right now about engagement. Now, the problem that I face basically is that I do not have that much time for engaging, especially with those 15-year-old kids.
Yeah.
Especially, not a reflection, but especially girls. How do I do that a little more faster? The third aspect, and the third...
Jesus, I'm about to change the world.
Probably. And the third question is, somebody would know, or let's say, minimalistic experiences. How do you tell them to explore this kind of emotion? Like, if they want to explore it, how would you guide them?
The way the current system stands, so justice is a really difficult one. So there's a difference between justice, there's a difference between facts, there's a difference between provable facts, and there's a difference between law. And law is right. So let's take it back to us queer weirdos, right? You cannot consent to violence against you. So if you can't consent to violence against you, offences against a person, acts and many others, it doesn't matter if you say, but I gave that person complete consent, it doesn't matter. And I do mention this quite a lot. If you've seen before, anyone here ever had a love bite? Anyone? In your life, have you ever had a love bite? You are guilty of breaking that law. 100%. Because it was more than trifling or transient. The justice system needs changing, for sure, when it comes to us and when it comes to many others. The problem is proof. And the problem is enough proof for the Crown Prosecution Service. It's all right. Feel free. And the Crown Prosecution Service is complex, really fucking complex, because you've got to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. You can't 9 times out of 10. especially when it's your experience. It's why I like the whole Black Mirror aspect of we've all got this recording chip in the back of our heads. There you go, let's just replay it. Fuck me, I think I've been jailed many times if you did that. So I don't want it either. You can't make fundamental changes. It is by engagement, and it is by proving small differences. If I'm working with this 15-year-old and she is fundamentally changing, I now have an interview with a headmaster. He wants to ask, how are you doing that? It's a very special needs school. I was at a cheer competition last year, and this really lovely, anyone here a psychiatric nurse? This really lovely psychiatric nurse was one of the first aiders, because we had some very serious injuries in cheerleading. I know you think you don't, but fuck me. Oh yeah, look, that bone split right through their skin. And this girl was having a serious panic attack because her friends had done a back handspring. You need to get backwards like that, land on your hands. Her elbow cracked the wrong way, her bone came through this way. There was definitely something fundamentally wrong with her arm already. She must have had some kind of green slip crack, something must have been there. And this person who was very experienced in the NHS way of doing things the problem is safeguarding. Safeguarding is not really about guarding a child, it's about making sure everybody's safe so no one gets into trouble or gets sued around it. That's what safeguarding is. I really understand some of my opinions are very controversial. It's not about beneficence, which is the benefit or the beauty or the goodness of the person that I can make a difference with. So if you end up with that system, and then a coach came up to me and said, Deb, that person's been talking to me for about half an hour, do you think you can help? And I'm like, yeah, if you ask them to move. And do I have your permission to do what you think I need to do, and or parental permission? You do. I tipped a fucking cup of water down the back of that girl's head, and I said, stand the fuck up. So you use shock. When somebody's sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system is arguing, not in your case, do not go into a house and do that. She's in such a state of panic that she can't self-regulate. But you can't even do stuff. So like if Tungsten, so I'll get it right in a minute, real names and shit. So if Tungsten was having a really bad time and couldn't regulate, I would take his hand and put it on my heart. Now, that's interesting for sexual abuse straight away, isn't it? And because if you help someone by cuddling, touching, and breathing, it makes a difference. There are only a few things that we can use and a few systems that help in that moment. Talking to them like, calm down, take a breath, it's okay, doesn't get anywhere because their sympathetic nervous system is on such a high charge, there needs to be a change. The water shocked her, me standing up and saying, stand the fuck up. So I threw it like, Alison, sorry, now I've got you, look at me. 2 minutes later, she was on the floor. She did brilliantly. And the psychiatric nurse said, how do we, it doesn't always work for everyone. You get this as well. This isn't an answer to all of those things. It's about how do we use the most effective method in the moment rather than the one that suits in case we get sued, and what safeguarding is. That's the difficult bit. And it is really hard. There are fantastic ways if you study dialectical behavioural therapy, if you study trauma. And I really think every therapist should be qualified in trauma, but they're not. Even if you've done a 2 to 4 year course, it doesn't mean you're qualified in trauma. You need to understand what trauma is. You need to understand if we're replaying it and what we're doing. So we have to be really careful about that. But you have to understand what trauma is if you want to work in those sorts of fields. And you have to know the most effective ways to deal with them and use techniques and teach people techniques so they can manage their shit themselves. We teach everyone to use everyone else or other things that are around them. Actually, that's really dangerous. If you rely on BDSM to regulate, to calm yourself, anyone here like a good flogging or a good punching or a good hitting to go, whew, feel a bit more regulated now, feel a bit, yeah, like a few people are nodding. Well, you are totally fucked up the arse, or not, if COVID comes along. It's not there, is it? You can't do it. And then what do we do? Is self-harm one of the best ways? That's interesting, isn't it? Self-harm, self-injury, what are the definitions? Why do we do them? They're all about what's right for society and culture and everything else as well, rather than teaching children to handle their emotions. When I'm in that school, they teach something called zones. Everyone heard of school zones? What they're teaching at the moment around emotions, around psychology? They're green, amber, and red zones. Guess what's in the red zone?
Anger.
As an emotion, anger. What the fuck is wrong with anger? It's a fucking awesome emotion. It's a power charge house. It's a steam train. I teach children the difference between where do you feel your feelings. There's a lovely bit of research that states where are you fizzy and busy, where are you dead heavy, where are you quite neutral. None of the emotions are right or wrong. You just have to learn to identify them and learn how to ride the wave and manage them. Anger isn't a bad emotion, aggression is. So teaching the difference between anger and aggression is also important. So we do things like, I say to this girl, so you can use rewind techniques and stuff. Stop, hang on. Let's go backwards. How could you have changed the outcome there? Let's just go backwards. What could you have done differently in that moment in order? If you want to look up that research, look up PNAS, look up Taiwan, Sweden, emotional body map. That's what you need to look up and then you'll find it pop up. The Greatest did an article on it, and that's a nice easy one to research. It's quite boring. It's got a lovely set of pictures of people of where you're busy so you learn to define your emotions. A lot of neurodiverse human beings and children cannot identify emotions. They're not taught to, then they can't manage them. Anyone here neurodiverse?
I've got a good example how I explained this to a client of mine, male, a bit autistic, the Plusnik wheel of emotions.
Yeah.
I give this to a lot of my male clients, and he was amazed. His response was, "Oh yeah, I've done module in marketing and PR. We have it there." And to apply this to his relationships didn't occur to him.
Oh no, business is different. We can function here. We're different. We can function here, but we can't function here, which is interesting. But the reason I love this one in particular is because if you can tell where you're feeling quite aware or just people, how many times do you actually listen to your fucking body? You don't. I can guarantee it. We're too fast. We're too busy. We're not. We haven't quite got that right, and we're understanding so much more when it comes to things like vagal nerve theory and somatics and understanding what's going on in the body in order to learn the response, in order to learn how to calm it, instead of just getting lost in our sympathetic nervous system, which has taken over. You've got this part in your brain, which is you've got prefrontal cortex and neocortex, which help us with empathy, reasoning, thinking, whereas this part of the brain is purely reactive. And it's called many things. It's called the limbic system. It's also called the lizard brain. People call it very many things. And you've got a really important part that comes around here, which is called the amygdala, which is what senses. We don't quite know how it works yet. It senses danger and different things, and then like shit tons of hormones get released into your body, and you just react. So if you had shit tons and you just react, having a conversation about it will not help that person because all the bits that listen to reason are fucking shut down. It don't work. So you do have to do something to lift that outside of thinking, change or get them into their rational brain. Oh, ask them a really weird question. Just put them out of sorts, and it can help bring them back. You have to study it. That's the problem. So I think studying is really important. But again, I don't think you can just start. I think you have to engage, and you have to show examples with different people. It's the same for us, isn't it? You meet somebody with a kink or that has a label. Do they suit you? I promise I'll come back to it. They don't necessarily just suit you, because actually what you need is to be able to get onto two human beings first. Just because your kink suit doesn't mean that you two will suit. And what somebody says, I work with words all the time. I work at couples and couples a lot. And what does that word even mean? Well, I want you to be loyal. What does loyal mean to you?
Don't grass me up to the old field.
What does it mean to you as well? Loyal. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were looking at my glasses. To me, it's kind of that traditional idea. It's changing. I've just come out of a big long-term relationship, but for me it was
Don't cheat on me. Don't lie to me.
Don't lie. Don't. Mainly around trust. I don't want to be lied to. I don't care what you've done within reason. Let's just clarify that. But as long as I'm not lied to, and I'm not sort of made out to be a fool because everyone knows something that I don't know.
Humiliate me.
Yeah.
What does loyal mean to you?
If someone's loyal, they're considerate of you, they check in with you, they care about your feelings. I'm not a jealous person, so that's not an issue. I'm someone who has compersion, so I've been involved with other people, and I'm fine as long as they're happy and doing something that gives them joy. So I don't have issues around that. One thing I have as a problem in the modern world is so many it's worse since the pandemic, is that there are a lot of people addicted to being online, and they think someone's all the list of whatever they are online, or they won't have anything to do with someone unless they're on the list, or that they excite them. That's all you need to know. And I need to be excited by someone's brain, by their emotions, and that excites me. The more I get to know someone, the more.
So is that loyalty as well for you?
For me, it doesn't have to be monogamy, but it has to be with. The loyalty is to do with more of caring and friendship.
Having you in mind.
Yes, having someone in mind.
Yeah. Okay, so if that's okay, you don't have to answer tell them to fuck off, it really is okay. What does loyal mean to you?
Well, I was thinking having something.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because actually you've got pretty different definitions. So can you see the problem when you just meet one motherfucking other human being? We need to talk about these things, because also even when you're talking about how you deal with people, find out what they mean by their fucking words first. Well, I want her to be good, I want my child to behave. Can you tell me what behaviour even means? What are the rules in the house? I work with a lot of families. I was working with one recently, and this kid doesn't go to school very often. She even sat in my therapy room the other day and she said, I didn't go in today. And I said, why not? She said, well, my friends went there, so I decided not to go in. That's interesting. And her parents are desperate for her to go in. She's going to fail this year if she doesn't. She's in a fancy private school. It's all collapsing. It's not good. Her confidence is down. She feels like shit. There's an irony in all of this. And I said, so what are the rules around her? Not one fucking person can answer me the same answer. The mum, the dad, or the brother or the sister. Now we have a problem. What are the consequences? What are the benefits for her? When's the last time you both went to the theatre or went to the cinema? And that's what's interesting. Is we have to ask what everyone means by something, because we're not together if we don't. Even fucking kink. What does kinky mean to you? What does fetish? What does polyamory mean to you? Hierarchical, equal, close triad. Like, should we go through the fucking list of how many we are? Do you mean kitchen table poly? Do you mean an open relationship? Do you mean just sex? Do you mean emotions? Do you mean that bodily fluids can be passed? Or, well, no, I don't mean that. Oh, okay. So what are the rules? Well, I have to be back by 10. Is that polyamory then? That's quite interesting. Can we ever stay the night? We don't define a lot of this, and we don't want to put the effort in to define it, so it becomes a problem. And it's the same with kids and families in schools. Nobody knows the fucking rules. And even if you put them out there, when we turned up to the cheer competition yesterday, there's quite a new group of parents with quite a young group. And our kids have Dutch braids. Fucking hell. If you don't know how to do a Dutch braid, you're there for 25 hours trying to do this shit. It has to be tight. And there were 2 or 3 people that turned up really late. That's disrespectful to their team members. It's clearly written. Everybody knows. We're quite a pedantic bunch of cunts when it comes to this sort of stuff. My daughter went up to somebody and said, no, we need to go into Royal National. What do you want me to do? Leave their hair? She said, I don't want to hear that attitude. I wouldn't accept it from your child. Very disgruntled parent right now. She said, listen, this is really important. This is about respect for the team. It's about caring for everybody. It's about all singing from the same sheet, that we understand the same fucking lyrics, if you didn't swear. And that your child needed to be here for 11 ready. So everyone feels good about it. That it's really clear about what's agreed, but that's not what we do. And that's the complication as well. And it's the same in our justice system and everything else. What do you mean by the word assault? You can't consent to your own assault. Well, what's an assault? What level of assault? What does it even mean? Can't leave a mark greater than trifling or transient. I'll tell you what, I better study your fucking biology then. Are you on aspirin? Are you on a blood thinner?
Is it assault if you hurt someone's feelings, like, you know?
Can be now, yes.
Yeah, no, but that's because physical.
Yeah, so domestic violence as well is a really good example of that. Not quite a few years ago, it's actually within the last 5 years, it actually changed. So now we start talking about coercion, we start talking about bullying, we start talking about controlling money, controlling friendships, controlling family. If you call your partner a fucking cunt, you're guilty of assault.
15 minutes then.
Thanks. So like it's huge. So if you verbally attack someone, you can actually be guilty even of. So there are different definitions for common assault, grievous bodily harm, actual bodily harm. There's all these definitions. Fuck me, I'm not a law expert or a biologist today. So there are all these definitions, but the problem is it is about proof, it is about all these other things. How do you prove it? What do you do? But yes, if you use verbal, you are just as guilty.
No, I'm just helping you out. Like every assault has a test to it. So, for example, it has to fall within the test, and if it does fall, and for example, that's what I was seeing the definition. You cannot consent to full assault, but the problem is that when you go into the
Which assault?
assault, second, there's also battery. For example, the next line actually is more on the line of battery than assault.
Yeah.
So basically, when you talk about love bite, that actually might not fall under it.
It can fall under battery, but even if you consented about it, because it is more than a charging on transit mark, depending, and this is a problem, even if you get somebody who knows their law, it's all about what that fucking person takes forward. Even with police, when you're being interviewed, what someone will take forward is different to what someone else will take forward, which is mad. And you've got it in rope work, marks, everything else as well. You've also got it in sports, but in sports it's allowed. It's different. So
So there's also another concept of voluntary non-effect injury, which says that if you consent to that violence, for example, I was a taekwondo athlete, we signed a waiver that we're gonna get hurt. Fine. Ice hockey, again the same.
Same in cheer. You sign a waiver that says if your nose is broken or your bone shatter, it's just a risk you're taking. There is no such waiver for sex or for anything else as well. It does not exist. And it doesn't matter if you write out a fucking contract, anything, what it does is it proves that you're guilty. Now, I think you should have contracts actually. I think you should write these things out because you stand a better chance. I had a client, I promise I'm coming back. I had a client years ago who was asked to cane a woman who just met, he'd never actually met her before, came to the point of bleeding and then fuck her from behind without any form of protection and come all over the blood and smear it all over her ass, right? They'd agreed, they'd gone through quite a lot of stuff about what they were going to do. They had this night, she's woken up in the morning, she's gone. He didn't wake up to her going, there's blood and semen and shit, not actual shit. There's stuff all over the sheets. The police knock on this door. And they interviewed him for some very serious charges. Pains to the point of opening skin, making her bleed, unprotected sex, which she said none of that was agreed to. And the problem is that now causes an issue. And actually, thank fuck, have really sensible people interviewing. And he said, look, I have got these texts, so they can also prove him guilty, but sensible police officer in that moment said, she clearly did consent. She might not have known. She did know what she was consenting to, but she might not have known what that was going to feel like and what it was going to be like. They did exactly what they agreed. And luckily, they didn't take it forward.
And then they didn't do rack, because I know rack's a bit of a thing, so...
We've got acronyms around consent. Here we go. I don't think it exists. Right? I don't even think risk-aware consensual kink exists because you do not understand the risk. You might consent in a moment, but if you don't know what the fuck it feels like, you actually don't know what you're consenting to. And you don't know the risk. I have hip injections every 6 months. A lot of people will say it's because of your first degree, Deb, so I've got ridiculous amounts of education because clearly my shit is I'm not clever enough though. There's my dad for you. I've been punched a lot in my hips and I've split the bursa across my hip bones, which are actually here. They're not quite where your hips are, they're a bit lower. And I have steroid injections into the hip here. Fuck me, that shit makes me cry. It hurts like hell. And I'm very out. So I talked to that particular doctor. It's a private doctor. It's quicker. It's done more easily. 120 quid for me for a hip. That's because of BDSM injury. If I'd have known that, what I know now, when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, don't know if I'd have consented to being punched in the same way. I didn't know. So can I be risk-aware if I had no fucking idea? And that's not, I don't mean that sanctimoniously or patronising in any way, shape or form. You can't know. And the same we talk about verbal. You asked about is verbal. Soft stuff. When you're spoken to in a certain way continuously over a period of time, we've got to really make sure our psyche is okay with that. Because if you're called a worthless fucking fat poor dump of a cunt, and I like that sort of phraseology, after a while, is it really going to get to me though? How much do I believe it and how is the other person lifting me up at the same time and how much can I hold? What mood am I in that day if I can't take it? What if it really gets to me, and then I'm sobbing. It's causing damage. So like, it is really interesting because words can be. You can say, Chris,
So I
sorry.
was just say two things. One, when you were having that sort of attack at your vet life, I don't check vet life too often, but followed up on that, and they don't have the balls to actually leave their comments up
Mm.
when you look back through it.
I did block a load of people, and that can take it off as well, so it does look like that. But I told a story many years ago. So when I tell a story about any of my clients, I have full consent and disclosure to do that. I do not just say anything about anybody, and I don't, because I have a lot of clients in the scene. And so I clearly ask, look, is it okay? I understand I'm coming from a position of power. I don't want to decide now. Let's decide in the first 3 months to see where we are and what's happening. I don't just go straight in. And many, many, many years ago, I think this is what's so shocking about all these comments. 15, 20 years ago, I had a client share with me that a dominant had taken a toilet brush from the toilet and shoved it straight up their cunt. I'm talking about vaginal walls. Now, look, I understand being kicked in the balls is also very painful, but I did see a lot of people with vaginas go, oh, just squeeze up a little bit. When you look at the membranes and the walls inside of what's happening for any of us, it's why anal sex is a lot more dangerous for us from any form of passing fluids, actually, because the membranes are even thinner, so we're more likely to bleed, we're more likely to have problems. The vaginal walls are actually a little thicker, but shoving one of those rough old-fashioned toilet brushes straight up someone's cunt that had actually been used in a toilet, I cannot imagine. I mean, I think that's a very good example of where did rap go?
Who thought that was a good idea?
But it's an interesting one, isn't it? Look, I really get people want to, and I'm not actually going to yuck someone else's kink. I think the dangers with that are 30-fold, let alone the internal damage, the bleeding, and the risk of bacteria. Fucking hell.
At least get a clean one.
Well, yeah, and then don't have sex for quite a few months after, so you're fucking fully healed. And
Use lots of lube.
yeah, I mean, it's a brush. The lube just won't work.
No.
It's just scratching immediately. And I remember telling this story about 15 years ago, and this person who was attacking said, what, from a fat fucking cunt, this is my description now, I've lost 35 pounds, mate, I'm not doing badly. From a fat fucking cunt who shoved a toilet brush up her cunt once, then punched a wall about it. Interesting. How long have you been following me, and what do you know? Because that is the story I told, but it was never about me. And there was no punching of the wall afterwards. I was like, and then when I blocked all these people, someone else then turned around and said, I said, Jesus Christ, just out of that. And this person from Australia, who I've never met in my life, and said, well, I follow you to keep you in check. Wow. The fuck are you, like, what are you doing, mate? Big strong male Australian dom. Why? What am I doing that can make anyone live or die right now? Really interesting about what power we give other people, what it means, and the fucking power we believe in us. Again, it still comes back to your original point of, I fucking really try and keep my ego in check. I speak to a supervisor, I have supervision, I check with friends, I check my facts. I don't say anything if it's not factual.
There was another point that you said, like, snap out of the person shot and poured the water over. There's a brilliant video of I think he calls it verbal jiu-jitsu. It's when someone's in your face. What are you scared? It's like, well, like shirt
Yeah.
from. It's just that.
Oh, that's Darren Brown.
Yeah.
Darren Brown does that.
And the same with, like, you stare at the girlfriend. Yeah, well, I think that it's good. Really simple girlfriend. Just wondered where she got it.
Where you got it, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a cheer dad a few years ago. I clearly upset his daughter because some of these kids got severely sunburnt, really badly sunburnt. And we say, especially at nationals, because we're in Bournemouth, please don't get sunburned, because with some of the outfits that they wear can be between £500 to £700, and the reason they're between £500 to £700 is the amount of rhinestones on them. Now, if you want an injury, watch a rhinestone on skin, because some of these kids come off last year. A girl called Alex came off, and she had a slice across her hands that was 2 to 3 millimeters thick all the way down, and the skin was just gone. And I wet wound heal a lot of those. I look after blister classes, different forms of treatment, because she's about to go on again. If she dries it up and she crushed, she's just going to bleed everywhere. Then everything gets stopped anyway. They are really fucking dangerous. So sunburn is a nightmare mixed with ease, because even more skin is going to come off, and the pain is unbelievable. And if you are supporting another person's weight, here you've just got their foot and they're doing something called a TikTok, and they're jumping from one to another, and all you've got is 2 people underneath holding their foot. That kid, if they come down, could break their fucking neck. And if you're going, actually, my sunburn, oh shit, I'm on the floor, you can't afford for those distractions. And this dad, his son plays really high level basketball in America right now. There's this huge guy so angry with me because I've upset the daughter, and he is verbally attacking me like no one else. I've been very nice about this particular issue. And he said, what the fucking hell? And I said, okay, I need you to step back out of my personal space. I do not feel safe right now. You are 6'6", you're shouting at me, and I felt about 300 people surge forwards trying to tell me I'm fine. It took 15 minutes of discussion, very calm, very nice, playing that verbal jiu-jitsu. You say she can't go outside, she can't fucking go outside. No, I didn't say that. I would love for her to go outside. Wouldn't that be lovely? I'm just wondering how she could go outside safely. White skin, bright red hair, very Irish, English complexion. Perhaps, maybe she could have worn a t-shirt or had her hair or put a hat on or done something. You should have fucking said, we did, it's written here in the pack, there you go. And it was all about calmness and fucking hell, you're playing, they brought back the game Gladiators. Like when you're on a podium and this person's on a podium, you're playing that game all the fucking time and you're trying to deal with those trolls and everything. The key is not to go onto their podium. Because that's the key always, isn't it? And then for me, even after I go back to your original question, this is someone else's podium. Is this actually how I feel? Is this what I want? Do I want to feel or think this way about myself? And what's taught me that I should? How do I undo that? And that's hard though, isn't it? It's really complex to stop those voices in your head because you are your own worst enemy.
A few things from earlier. One of the things when you said about how do you engage people online is that I'd back up saying don't, because people lie. People will say that they're in a certain situation, like that beneficial whether when that parent was attacking the trans agenda for their kid going through difficulty. Yeah. That were only effective because the parent actually had an issue that this person could help and solve them with. If they're just lying and aren't actually in that scenario, then no amount of compassion will help them, and you won't know that unless it's someone you're talking to in person. I started recently going to the gym with some people who are a bit right-wing leaning, not necessarily National Socialist Nazis, but they're getting there, and rather than yeah, I didn't know that it was at the having a beer afterwards where they start talking about stuff, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, hold on, like when they start saying about their sort of views and sort of how they feel about things, and I just was able to calmly challenge them over a beer, and then at the end of it they go, oh wow, you're really you're an anarcho-socialist, but you're not like just an angry crazy. I'm like, yeah, because I'm not.
Yeah, you all are. Like, all women are, all men are, all people are like fucking.
Yeah, and I just went through having, we've got different sides of views. Why do I have my views? Why do you have your views? That's what it's more relevant around.
Yeah. It's that gentle engagement.
And I'm more likely to stop someone from turning into a Nazi by just sitting across and having a conversation with them about, look, why do you feel that way? What are you feeling threatened by, and things like that.
Has anyone seen that film that was based in what's it called? It's about when it was deep south and you've got a lot of racial division, and it was about a school for children. Sorry?
I remember the title, the football team, right? Wherein
no, it was about a school that had been burnt down. Sorry?
It's usually Alabama.
What was interesting is you had this guy who was head of the local Ku Klux Klan, and you had a black woman who was fighting for her children's rights to go to school. And they're in this special, it's a French word for some kind of court where they have people on both sides, and there've been a lot of horrific aggression. What's it called? It's a true story. That's what's really touching about it. And basically, this guy who was in charge of the fucking Ku Klux Klan, that is pretty extreme. She won him round. Like, it was an unbelievable story. They became friends, and it ruined his business, it ruined his life, and at the end he was saying, well, I haven't got a business anymore because all his white friends were torching and doing whatever. And there was this, he had a garage, and it was just this absolute queue of people saying, we will come and support you. It was a really beautiful, and they went to universities together afterwards and did all this stuff together, and it was just by engaging. She just kept doing nice things. He had a child who had some sort of learning difficulty, as they used to say it. Fucking hell. And this child was complex, but she would help look after him because she worked in the hospital as well. She went, no, I moved into another room so he's safe. And he was like, you don't do that, you sort of people. She's like, well, I have. And she was just this beautiful human, so compassionate, so caring.
Another really good example is, I forgot his name, damn it.
We're doing really badly.
It's a African American social worker who goes to KKK meetings and regularly talks to the members and sticks it out. And so, and until today, he has converted 270 former KKK members. Formally got to the stage of inviting you to have the cloth
Yes.
burned.
So again, though, that's about engagement rather than
On a human
confrontation.
level, this is
It
how
is.
he does that. He
And then
finds
you
the
create
common
change.
humanity
Yes,
despite
right.
the politics.
What are you going to say? Because we've got to stop as well.
I had a great one with the same video posted in two groups. One was majority of black people in one of the groups, and the other one was a martial arts group. And it came with the people in the majority of black people in the group, where they're going, oh, it's oppression by the Asian people about a woman didn't like the response of a hair place, of her trying to take something back. This woman in the video had disagreed with the shop owner, grabbed things off the wall and was trying to walk out of the store because you can't return like hair. And he stopped her, and she's hit him about 3 or 4 times. And then when he's tried to sort of stop her doing that, she swung a basket into his head, and then he's grabbed her around the neck to try and restrain her a bit. The martial arts stuff was like, well, it seems to just be that the news focus was, let's ignore all the assault that she's done on him first, for him to do one thing in return. And all the other ones where it's, oh, it's a racial thing.
And I think,
and I had a great discussion in the racial group.
yeah, and what you've also got to remember is with transgenerational trauma and everything else as well, is that we are scared. We do feel affronted when it does turn out. You've got to find so many fucking balances. It's a lot more complex than just seeing what is. But I'm really sorry I've got to stop. I hope somebody's got something from today. And thank you very much for your time.
Just end this? Do I just end the stream?
Right, people make their way up to this door.